In a statement to the New York Times earlier today, a spokesman for Kevin McCarthy issued a flat denial that McCarthy ever said he would push Trump to resign. That spokesman said, quote, McCarthy never said he'd call Trump to say he should resign. McCarthy never said he'd call Trump to say he should resign. To further clarify, you should also know that NBC News reached out to the congressman's office following that statement, specifically asking again and drilling down on the question of whether or not Mr. McCarthy said he would push President Trump to resign. His spokesman responded saying, quote, no, he did not. Leader McCarthy also issued a statement himself today saying in part, quote, the New York Times reporting on me is totally false and wrong.
The New York Times reporting on me is totally and completely wrong. Kevin McCarthy talking about whether or not this allegations from the New York Times that he was going to talk to Donald Trump after what he did with January 6th, because as everyone saw from many Republicans, they were against what he did as well until they were for it. Now, the problem that Kevin McCarthy has with this denial is that there's tape. Watch.
Liz, you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Kevin. I guess there's a question when we were talking about the 25th Amendment resolution.
Yeah.
And you asked if what happens if it gets there after he's gone. Is there any chance? Are you hearing that he might resign? Is there any reason to think that might happen?
I've had some few discussions. My gut tells me no. I'm seriously thinking of having that conversation with him tonight. I haven't talked to him in a couple days. From what I know of him, I mean, you guys all know him too. Do you think he'd ever back away? But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to call him.
What Kevin McCarthy thought he was going to do was he was going to call him on tape. But when someone reported it, it's you guys completely total fake news. Fake news. Remember that because he continued on. There's more.
This is what I think. No, it'll pass the House. I think there's a chance it'll pass the Senate even when he's gone. And I think there's a lot of different ramifications for that. Now, I haven't had a discussion with the Dems that if he did resign, would it not happen? Now, this is one personal fear I have. I do not want to get into any conversations about Pence party or anything like that. I mean, the only discussion I would have with him is that I think this will pass, and it would be my recommendation we should resign. I mean, that would be my take, but I don't think he would take it, but I don't know.
Wow, it's almost like Kevin McCarthy was lying about the conversations he was having. As a matter of fact, he was pointing out how specifically he would call and tell him to resign. Now, those things that he said might pass, he was talking about the impeachment proceedings. It'll definitely pass House, it'll probably pass the Senate, so maybe you should just resign. These were the discussions that were being had. Kevin McCarthy, who then later went to Mar-a-Lago and stood next to Donald Trump, took that picture and kissed his butt, and then was later frustrated that story even got out there. Now, really fast, Francesca, before I let you in on this, because there was other Republicans, not just him, because we know this, that weren't very happy with that situation either. So as they were talking about it further in this group of Republicans on this call, they said what he did is unacceptable. Nobody can defend that, and nobody should defend it, is what McCarthy told the group. Other Republican leaders in the House agreed with Mr. McCarthy that the president's behavior deserved swift punishment. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the second ranking House Republican, said on one call that it was time for the GOP to contemplate a quote, post-Trump Republican House. While Representative Tom Emmer of Minnesota, the head of the party's House campaign committee, suggested censuring Mr. Trump. Isn't this something else? So it's not just Kevin McCarthy, so we can ask him all the questions we want about why he was lying about his involvement and whether or not he was actually on the right side, by the way, on the right side. And then Steve Scalise and others on this phone call. So it wasn't just Kevin McCarthy that was keeping this a secret, as we know. Other people heard him talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin McCarthy has wanted to have it both ways since the beginning of this entire thing, since January 6th happened, where one of the phone calls we know was him on the phone with Donald Trump, and Trump was saying, no, those aren't my people, that's Antifa. And he's like, sir, we know it's your people. They've got your name all over their shirts. Number one, right? So like we know he's been trying to coax Trump down off of whatever kind of, throne he imagines himself on, and at the same time appease the base. And he's been waiting to see, is there gonna be any real accountability for this? Look at how much you can do a complete made you look with the entire Republican and Democratic base, with all voters saying, that never really happened. Oh, look over there. No, it wasn't us. And look at how, even with the second impeachment, he was acquitted. He was acquitted by the Senate, and so he can still serve as president. If he weren't, he would never have been able, he wouldn't be able to run again. Remember when we were talking about this? We were like, why wouldn't they find him all guilty so that they can at least have another crack at this, and they can take this psychopath who they can't get under control out of office for good in the future? But they're too afraid. So call it afraid. I don't know which way, Jayar. It's cowardice no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I saw spineless trending on Twitter this morning, and I was like, oh, I know who this is about.
Yeah.
I mean, it was self-explanatory right there for what it was. Now, again, this is about exposing the reality in the face of some lies that Kevin McCarthy was telling. Let's jump down to graphic 4, because Matt Gaetz had a specific issue with this story. And I was gonna say you might be surprised at his take, but you're probably not, because what he's upset about is that these tapes were released in Kevin McCarthy's face, and not that Kevin McCarthy lied and did these things. So look at this tweet. He goes, while I was rallying in Wyoming against Liz Cheney, Kevin McCarthy was defending Liz Cheney among House Republicans, while Liz Cheney was secretly recording Kevin McCarthy for the New York Times. And he tweeted at McCarthy, you should have trusted my instincts and not your own. So Matt Gaetz, the scumbag that he is concerned about how Kevin McCarthy allowed himself to be taped by Liz Cheney to now be exposed for the lies that he was telling people, instead of having an issue with Kevin McCarthy lying about what he said he was gonna tell Donald Trump. I don't even know, do you even think he went and even had that phone call with Donald Trump? Because he told Liz Cheney and these other Republicans that he would. He probably got cold feet, or probably went to Mar-a-Lago to have that conversation. And Trump said, are you kidding me? I'm gonna destroy you. And Kevin McCarthy dropped down to a knee.
No, I think because that meeting was while Trump was still in office, correct? He's still lame duck. He still goes there. He kisses the ring. No, you can hear in his voice from talking to Cheney that he's like, well, I mean, you know him, I don't know, but I'll call him and ask him. Trump's not gonna listen to you, and he knows he's not gonna listen to you. You asked him to call off the goons on the day of, and he still didn't listen to you. I mean, it's interesting because out of all the damning things that come out of January 6th, Kevin McCarthy, yes, I understand he's the minority speaker and that he's got a leadership role to play. But I'm like, compared to some of what the other representatives in the Republican Party were doing on that day, giving tours, making deals, helping plan the Stop the Steal rally, speaking at the Stop the Steal rally, inciting violence. I'm like, I until I hear that, I'm like, I refuse to be scandalized because this whole thing is insane to me. But of course, McCarthy is the person who would enact any kind of consequences upon his very own caucus, upon his very own party, and he's not gonna be willing to do that. But again, he curries him no favor, right? He's trying to, like, nobody loves Liz Cheney, so he's gotta run away from that. Everyone loves MAGA folks, but once they hear this, that he was thinking about asking the president to resign when he had an election stolen from him, so-called, he's screwed.
Yeah, the only senator that's happy about this is Mike Lee, because his texts were the news, and now he may not have to answer as much. Now let's ask Kevin McCarthy a bunch of questions.